Pontiac engines are awesome. In my opinion, one of the best engines from the muscle car era. What's not awesome is their propensity to leak, especially from innocuous areas like the valve covers. So today, I'm going to be replacing valve cover gaskets on my newly built Pontiac 465. Let's get into it. One of the issues with Pontiac engines and leaking oil is the valve cover gasket and the way that it's set up from the factory. Instead of having, 6, maybe 8 bolts that evenly spread the load, we get 4 bolts. And in many cases, the valve cover that is used is a stamped steel piece. And so there's just no rigidity in the system. Because the engine is angled downwards towards the back of the car and is in a V configuration, what we have is a propensity for oil to pool at the back. And it's hard to see right now, but if you look closely, I have an oil leak coming from the very back of the valve cover. I have that same leak coming from the passenger side. For those of you with aftermarket heads, this is actually a bigger problem. Many of them don't drain oil as well as the factory heads do back to the block. So, especially in high performance situations where you may be pushing a lot of oil to the top of the head, you get a pooling effect as the engine is running where the oil is actually above the gasket line at the back of the head. So how do we fix this? What we have here is my favorite gasket for the Pontiac engine. This is an Edelbrock 7590. It is a rubberized tall gasket and it has a composite core which prevents explosive or implosive forces from causing any kind of leaks. Now, generally speaking, rubberized gaskets like this can be reused as long as you are not using any kind of gasket cinch or RTV, anything like that. Sometimes you may need to do that. There may be situations where you just can't get it to seal dry and you will have to use some sort of gasket cinch or RTV sealant. And in those situations, these gaskets become one-time use, but hopefully you're not actually having to take them in and out of the car frequently to where that's a problem. If you do end up using RTV, any type of sealant, a gasket cinch, my favorite is Permatex's Aviation. It's type 3. It never actually dries. It always remains tacky, and you can use it sparingly, just enough to kind of seal up the areas that you're having trouble with. And because it always remains tacky, it never cracks, it never creates a new hole that oil is going to get through. In my situation here, we're going to install these dry today. And if that doesn't work, if that doesn't clear it up, I will go in and at least on the back side of the head, where it meets the valve cover and the head itself, I will add some Permatex Type 3 Aviation sealant. So enough of my jibber jabber, let's go ahead and get to it. Let's get these swapped and see if we can't fix that issue. As you can see here, I've got oil on these threads, which indicates there's actually a bigger leak than I thought going on here. All right, if we take a look at this gasket that we brought out here, this is the front side, so this is the front of the engine right here, and this is the rear of the engine. You can see that this would be the sealing surface for the valve cover itself. And then this is the sealing surface for the head. And I don't know if you can see this, but there's oil all over it. So yeah, I had a pretty bad leak here. Looks like these areas are fine, but there's definitely oil all around here, which is why it's weeping. all from under the valve cover gasket and the valve cover itself, and eventually onto the floor. Now, if I bring you over to the engine itself, in my case, with these heads, this is a 310 CFM Kaufman Racing D-port head. As you can see here, where we have the provisions for the valve cover bolts, because of the porting on the intake side, these bolts actually see the inside of the intake ports. And if I'm getting oil through the valve cover gasket onto the threads of the bolts, that oil is actually also making it into the engine. So we're consuming a little bit of oil by doing that as well. So we're going to fix all of that today. All right, so the next step here is to clean up all of this extra gasket material. We want to get this sealing surface all free of any of the oil that is on it and any of this just gasket goop. We want to try our best to keep anything out of there, because anything that we put in here, ultimately oil is going to carry it through the passages down into the engine, and then the sump gets to deal with it. So let's try and be as clean as possible and get this all cleaned up and go from there. I'm just using a plastic scraper here. Sometimes you do have to use a metal scraper depending on how bad the old gasket material is. Generally speaking, you want to not be able to feel this. Like, I can still feel this with my thumb a little bit. It's not terrible, but we want as smooth of a sealing surface as we can get here. I don't necessarily recommend using a razor blade. That might be something that you have to do every once in a while. But especially with an aluminum head like I have here, that razor blade is just going to dig in and gouge. And you're going to create more areas of leak at that point anyway. So plastic first. If you need to go to like a metal spackle blade, something that isn't incredibly sharp, that would be the second step. And then third and final step, if you just really can't get it, is going to be, moving to a razor blade. You just need to be careful with that. So for this final wipe down here, I'm just going to take a little bit of carbon choke cleaner, and we're going to go around everything, make sure everything is kind of surgically clean, dry. That way we can lay on our valve cover gasket on the base. We'll have to do the same cleaning to the valve cover itself. That should give us a nice clean and flat surface that will seal well. All right, so now we've got to clean up the sealing surface on the valve cover itself. As you can see, hopefully you're kind of seeing that in the camera, there's a little bit of oil here. So once again, we need to make sure all the oil is cleaned up, that we have a surgically clean sealing surface. That way there's nothing getting in the way of these sealing properly to both the valve cover and the head. Okay, these nice and clean and dry on the sealing surface. So next thing we'll do is we'll take one of our valve cover gaskets here, and we want to just make sure that there's no kind of production irregularities that is going to fight us when we're trying to install these. I will typically just put the bolts in place where they need to be. And then we're just checking for conformity to the surface, make sure there's no areas where we're going to have any bubbling, folding, anything like that, where we would actually have a non-seal situation. This one looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and check the other one on this as well. Okay, both of these gaskets are looking pretty good. I don't think that we're going to have any problems. So I'm going to go ahead and get to reinstalling this. I do want to talk about the valve cover itself. This is a Butler Performance fabricated valve cover. Highly recommend a valve cover like this for Pontiac applications simply because of the structured sealing area. I know a lot of people love the stock chrome or even the stock painted valve covers, but what happens is because they're stamped steel, the first thing that we as humans go to when we have a leak, especially coming from here, is that let's just go ahead and crank down on the bolts. Let's make it tighter. Tighter is going to seal better. But what ends up happening is you oil can the bolt hole areas right here. And you create a reverse dent. That means in this area, all through here, your seal actually goes away. It deforms the gasket, it deforms the valve cover, and it actually makes it harder to seal. So going with a valve cover that has a solid sealing surface, like an aluminum fabricated or even a cast aluminum, people like the Holley and the MT finned valve covers, those are great because of the solid sealing surface. So when we reinstall this, no matter what type of valve cover we're using, whether it's fabricated, whether it's cast, or whether it's stamped steel, we want to evenly put pressure on these bolts, and we don't actually want to over tighten it. We want to make sure that our sealing surface is providing even, thorough pressure as much as we can when we put it back on the head. That's going to be how we get a seal and keep a seal, even when we're running oil levels that are above the gasket line. So what I want to do is I want to start by getting the bottom two bolts just kind of started. And what that's going to do is it's going to help me align everything. Okay, now that I've got the bottom two bolts in, this helps me align the rest of the gasket. For these two bolts here, because I actually enter the intake port on the head itself, we're going to actually add just a little bit of sealant to the thread. This is kind of up for debate. The gasket should inherently seal against the head surface and actually through the bolt. So there is a train of thought that says you shouldn't need to seal these bolts up, but I'm of the train of thought that I'm going to do it anyway just in case, especially because we don't have a positive seal here. There's no O-ring or anything like that. So what could happen, especially with an EFI system like this, is you get unmetered air into that intake after the metering has occurred. And it can, kind of mess with your tune a little bit, and it just, makes for rough running. So we're going to go ahead and use just a little bit of thread sealer on the very end of these bolts. We don't need a whole heck of a lot. We obviously don't want to be ingesting a ton of it. We want just enough to seal the bolt in the head and prevent any air exposure. So the next step in the sequence here is we want to tighten this down as evenly as possible. To do that, we're going to go ahead and tighten these in a crisscross pattern. Again, we don't want to over tighten this. We want even pressure along the entire valve cover gasket. So we'll just go ahead and in a crisscross pattern here, get this run down. You'll notice I'm not using any power tools here. What we don't want to do is get ahead of ourselves and just run these down, because that's going to be where we are creating non-uniform pressure. So sometimes, as much as it's nice to have those power tools, feeling what you're doing and in a slow way is going to be helpful. All right, we'll just go ahead and cinch these down just maybe another quarter turn. So that's one side done. The other side is the same sequence. There's nothing different. It's actually a little bit easier on this car because there's less stuff in the way. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done. Once everything's done there, best thing to do is clean up all the oil that you have on the bottom of the engine. I'll get my car up on the lift and check everything out, do a good cleanup. And then it's really just driving it and see if it comes back. Hopefully not. I'm hoping that I've done a diligent job here and that's not going to come back. If it does come back, I'll put some of that aircraft sealant on it, and that should do it. And I shouldn't have to take these valve covers off again for a long time. Project's complete. The passenger side was a success. I do actually think that it had a bigger oil leak than the driver's side. So I think I'm cautiously optimistic that I've cured that and that my garage floor will remain clean from here on out. So I hope that you guys got something from this. I know that I only covered the valve cover side of this. The Pontiac engine does have other areas where it leaks oil from, namely the pan, and the rear main seal, and sometimes the front seal as well. I may do a video on those later on, but this engine is brand new. It's not leaking from anywhere else, so I'm not going to cover that right now. If you do have questions, let me know. I hope that I earned a like and a subscribe from you guys today. Have a great day. Keep wrenching. Drive your stuff.